Okay, so today we are taking a look at place value, and I'm Lisa Riggs with the Kentucky Center for Math. Glad everybody could be here on a Friday afternoon. Just a little bit about me. If you've been at our sessions, you've heard some of the same things before, but just very briefly, my experience and why I am in this position that I am. I was a classroom teacher for a lot of years. I can't believe that many. Wow. But in 2003, I started on this professional growth journey by becoming National Board Certified Middle Childhood Generalist, which kind of led me into a little more focus and became an MIT Math Recovery Trained Specialist in 2007, ABMR champion, SNAP facilitator for those years. And it's just been a natural progression for me to then join KCM in 2015 as an RC and became math recovery leader at that point. And I've trained several people throughout the state to follow me in this math recovery journey, which is so awesome and so fun. And some of you guys are people that I've trained in support. Some of the pictures there you see, Jennifer, you might, this is my husband and I at Epic up in Madison, Wisconsin, back in February.
So Lisa, one of the things that's happening is we only see that cover. And so when you clicked on it, and I knew you were talking about it, I knew what that slide was going to look like, but we do not see it. So maybe you do want to come out of it and go back in.
Maybe I do. Let's see. So, you know what?
Lisa and I actually practiced this the other day too.
So yeah, and Julie and I practiced this morning, and this is, I'm gonna have to even exit out of my.
So while she's doing that, if I could, while she's getting us back up, I do want to mention to you guys that next week happens to be KCM favorites. So that's what our Zoom sessions will be. In addition to that, after that, we will be doing, oh yeah, that looks great. Yeah, that looks like we're getting ready to have some.
There, now.
This, yeah.
There we are.
Go ahead and do in the presentation mode. Are you in presentation mode?
I think so. What do you see?
I see all of it, which is okay. I guess we'll say that that's okay.
No, we won't.
Okay.
Well, not.
She's gonna keep trying. She's gonna keep trying. The week after we do our books next week, we will have a week of focus on multiplication. We hope you'll join us. Always giving you the best information.
There. Now, is that better?
That is better. You want to click to the next screen and let's see if we click.
There we go.
Yep, looking good. I think you're cooking with gas now. Perfect.
There we are. Okay,
there we go.
We'll just finish this real fast. There's all about me and all my stuff that I've done. Okay, and I put little hearts on here because these are what I love in life. Family, my job, and just a little bit about me. Since we have been on quarantine, I've made this fairy garden, and I'm looking forward to this summer being able to grow my vegetables in my garden. So planted some seeds while I've been on this respite. So just a reminder that Kentucky Center for Math website has lots of resources, and I know you guys are the tried and true bunch, so you have probably checked those things out, but be sure you share it with your colleagues because we want to make this available to as many people as possible. So our agenda for today is to take a look at the standards that are related to decimal place value and some research. Look at decimal place value models, some activities, and some resources. We're going to check those things out. So let's just dive into the standards because I know a half hour goes by really fast. I decided to go ahead and just pull the standards from the Kentucky Standards document because I love our standards document. If you guys haven't taken a good close look at it, it is an awesome document because some of the things I like about it are the standards for mathematical practice are right there at the top, and those connections are embedded within the standard. So the cluster, our standards are listed on the left and then a clarification on the right. And it also has that coherence. So what came before that standard and where is that standard headed to? And if you go to KentuckyStandards.org, I believe it is .org, then those are clickable links. So you can jump to those if you need to. So it's awesome. So just a really quick overview of the standards are the fourth grade standard is number and operations in fractions is where decimals first appear, okay? And as related to 1/10 and 100th and how that relates. So we want them to know the decimal notation for those fractions and be able to compare two decimals up to hundredths place. Okay, so that was very brief, but it's there for you guys to dive into a little bit deeper when you look at the PowerPoint. Okay, the fifth grade standards now are in number and operations in base 10. So hopefully you see that difference. It's a subtle difference between fourth graders are operating in that fraction, and now fifth graders we're thinking more about it as a place value piece. So in fifth grade, we want students to recognize that multi-digit number, the digit in the ones place represents 10 times as much as it represents as we move to its place to the right, and 1/10 of its place to the left. So as we move, and there's the little graphic that shows that. So as we're moving to the right, we're dividing by 10. As we're moving to the left, we're multiplying by 10. Okay. And MBT2 in the fifth grade is multiply and divide by those powers of 10. So, and I know I'm moving through this fast, and we also want students to be able to read, write, and compare those decimals. And this time it's up to thousandths place. In fourth grade, it was just to tenths and hundredths that we were working with. Fifth graders go up to thousands, and being able to compare using those comparison symbols. Also in fifth grade, we want kids to be able to round decimals to any place in that place value piece. So any questions about the standards and where this happens within that progression? Or comments? All right. All right, so our standards are there for you guys to look at. So as I was preparing for this session, I did some reading from 5 Indicators of Decimal Understandings. And from that article, I gleaned that research on decimal learning suggests that students have difficulty connecting decimal symbols with the pictorial representations. And often students will apply whole number ideas to decimals and disregard the placement of the decimal point and invent inconsistent algorithms based on their interpretation of the situations. And if you've worked with kiddos that struggle, or maybe not even struggle, that are just, this is new to them, we see kids doing that, applying what they know about whole numbers to fractions and to decimals. So putting it in context can help kids to understand. So 2 words that I pulled out of that research were connecting representations, okay? Which hopefully if you were in my session of a couple of weeks ago, I think, I don't know, time is a blur right now, but the last time, connecting representations was one of the things that I touched on. You might remember this graphic because it is from the mathematical teaching practices, actually the 3rd practice, I believe. And it is to use and connect mathematical representations. And we know that these mathematical teaching practices are what we look for good teaching. Okay, so the last time we kind of related this to the 3 aspects of number. Okay, so would anybody like to speak to that, about where we saw those mathematical representations in the standards, okay, and in this visual? They want to unmute and speak. I can't see you guys in the chat, so sorry. And this is what you call wait time, by the way.
I think, Lisa, the last time that you had shown that representation, we talked about that 3 aspects of number, that verbal, symbolic, and quantitative, and then also adding in that physical and contextual with it, and how all of that goes together to help kids with that conceptual understanding.
Yeah, exactly, Tonda. Awesome. Awesome. So if you think back to when maybe you were in school and you learned about decimals, I can remember it was just put on the 0. Just move the decimal point and stick on a 0. Anybody remember that? Can you relate? Okay. What are we leaving out when we teach kids those kinds of tricks?
Lisa, there's no building of the conceptual understanding of what a decimal really is. And then we take away from the kids that ability to continue decimals from whole number understanding, because they really would have an intuitive understanding of decimals, and we've got to link those for them.
Right, exactly. Thank you, Kelly. For those of you, and I know some of you guys were in my primary session, have heard me tell the story of my high school teacher writing a 3 on the board, asking the class, what is this? And of course, high school kids, we just go, it's a 3. And his answer to us was, no, it's not. It is chalk on a board. Okay. And I didn't get that for the longest time. I really thought, what are you talking about, you crazy person? It's a 3. But as a teacher of students now, I realized that what he meant was it's only a symbol until we build the understanding. And the understanding is all of these things, and they're all interconnected, and kids need to have an understanding of all of it, not just the symbol, but all of these things. So until I understand not just the whole number piece, but also fractions and also decimals, we need to have the context. We need to know the quantitative piece that goes with that. And so how do we build that? How do we help kids understand those things? That's what we have to think about as teachers. And we can't just use symbols to represent what we're trying to show. It has to be interconnected and interrelated, so that when I think of 5/10, do I have a mental picture of what 5/10 means? Okay. Hopefully you do. Hopefully something appeared in your mind for that. Okay, so we're going to think about what kind of models can we use to develop this conceptual understanding of decimal place value. And our standards did address some of those things that Kentucky kiddos are expected to be using. In the decimal place value models, we might start with area, which could be the base 10 materials, like the ones that Bonnie showed us yesterday, 3D models and 2D models of place value pieces, which might look like this. Okay. And kids can also use 10 by 10 grids to color in tenths and hundredths. Okay. And also a rational number wheel, which if you were in our third grade fractions, we gave out those for building fractions, but if you use the ones for tenths and hundredths, you can also use it for decimals. Okay, anybody have experience using those things and want to comment? I like hearing from you guys instead of having to hear from myself all the time.
I use area models a lot, shading the grid and then writing the corresponding number to the representation. I also use the fraction representation, switching back and forth between decimal representation on grid to the fraction representation. I think that makes learning really stronger.
It does, because hopefully we have built that understanding of fractions and they can tie the two together. When we think back about that, connecting representations, we want all those connections kind of weaving together and making those synapses stronger, right? Through connections. Awesome.
I love the rational wheel, the idea of thinking about that as an area of a circle and partitioning it off that way. As a former middle school teacher, the connections that makes into sort of the middle school geometry standards is just amazing. So the more work we do with all these different representations, the better we prepare kids for the ever expanding range of numbers they have to work with.
Yes, awesome. Okay, and I failed to mention that in your packet you'll have some 10 grid, a copy of 10 grid, so that you can use that. And also there are a couple of, there's a black line master for making your own rational number wheel. So, and with some directions on how to do that. So if you don't have those, you can make yours. Okay, some other models that we might use for helping kids to understand decimal place value might be the meter stick. The one that I have a picture of is marked. I liked the fact that it had the decimeters marked and color coded, because color coding just makes it so much easier to structure a number. So I thought that was a nice representation. And also, of course, number lines is that linear understanding. We want kids to have that as well. Okay, but you might be thinking, oh, but what about money? Money is a part of the decimal system, which it is, and kids may be familiar with the decimal point placed in money. But in my reading, according to Van de Waal, which I call it Van de Waal rather than the actual title, Teaching Student-Centered Mathematics, my reading in that book suggested that for students that money's not the best place to start because the money system is only 2D and physical models are non-proportional. So their first contact with decimals should be more flexible than money. So it's not recommended for the beginning point for the model, although it is an important application for decimal numeration, and for them to they do need to have that understanding. It's not the best place for a model. So our models go back to those physical models that we talked about with place value pieces, with grids, with linear models first before using money. Any comments or questions you guys want to talk about with that?
So I think your point of proportional and non-proportional models is really important. It was one of my math educator aha moments that I had in a training about thinking about the models that we choose as entry points for students are important because the proportionality of it helps them to make sense of it. But then as you're progressing them toward a more flexible understanding of that concept, using non-proportional models really helps them to see the big picture of the mathematics. So I love that you pulled out of the Van de Waal book the fact that start with the proportional and then go to money after it, because again, 100 pennies does not equal the one physical dollar bill.
Right, exactly. So in our primary course, we did use some proportional models for teaching money. So that can maybe transition kids to that's a good step for those kids that need that transition. So for those of you that have that. But I do want to point out, as far as Van de Waal too, I do have it with me. If you want to do some more reading, it is chapter 14 in the Van de Waal book. And I will be pulling out a couple of resources from Van de Waal. But chapter 14 in the Van de Waal book is developing decimal and percent concepts and decimal computation. So nice resource if you want to do more reading about decimals. Okay, so some of our activities now that we're going to apply to develop conceptual understanding for decimal place value. So what are some things we can do with this fun stuff? Okay. Another great resource that I happen to have is the Mindset Mathematics, Visualizing and Investigating Big Ideas for 5th grade by Jo Bowler. And I've just kind of adapted one of the activities that she had within her 5th grade book to make it something that you might be able to use in this new learning environment, because of course the way the book is written is for us to use within our classrooms, which of course we can't do as much right now. But this might be one that you could share, and it's kind of an investigation. So in this activity, students explore place value relationships with themselves as the unit. So we're going to be thinking about that and moving in both directions on this place value. So the unit is, students are going to think about themselves as the one, and then they want to think about something that would be 10 times themselves, 100 times or 100 times themselves, 1,000 times themselves, and then going in the opposite direction. What is 1/10 of themselves? What's 100th of themselves? What's 1,000th of themselves? So I think this is a fun activity. I started kind of thinking about it, trying to do it myself. So I thought, okay, kids, if you wanted to do this, how would I do this with students virtually? they could be given just a Google slide and say, okay, you can put your ideas and thoughts in here. So I just thought, okay, so there's me, I'm the unit. Okay, so now what might be 1,000th of me or 1/10 of me? Does anything pop into your mind about what it might be? By the way, I'm 5'3". 5'3". Very small person. Ah, Cindy. Cindy says, I see that in the chat, says that it might be a cat, might be the 10th of me. Okay, I don't know what my click is. Ah, guess what? It's my cat. I did pick my cat. That it might take 10 of my cats to be the same as me. So, good, great minds think alike, Cindy. Okay, so, and being able to think in those two directions is totally awesome. So I thought about, you know, what could I find? One thing, for 1,000 of me, I thought about how many of me, what would be the distance that is a mile, and how many miles would it, if I reiterated myself 1,000 times, what would it be? So some of you guys are from around my area. Okay, Abby. Abby Peak, you're not too far from me. I said the distance from Camelsville to Greensburg, the next town over, is about 1,000 times me. Okay, so I just clicked on Google Maps and took a screenshot of that distance and put it on there as that. So kiddos could do that too. However, here's one little caveat I would say. To make this more investigative for your students, I would caution giving them the examples other than your unit here, because when we give them the examples, then we've taken their thinking away, right? So we don't want to take their thinking away, but leave it wide open and see what things they could come up with. But I think it would be so fun to try to do. And to think about it. I even thought what would go here, what would go here. So I might go ahead and finish this, even though I don't have any kids to share it with now. What a bummer. So maybe some of you guys can do this, and when we meet back together, or send it to me, I'd love to see it. It would be awesome. It'd be fun. So, but it's an exciting little activity. So I do have a little page that has that on it if you wanted to put it into a slide, but it's pretty easy to make as well. So, but yeah, it's a fun thing to share. So, and when Bonnie shared hers moving in this direction, I was thinking about this activity. So, so it's kind of it can connect from what they learned from yesterday's big numbers to today, going in both directions. So if you do share that with students, please let me know. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at an activity called shifting units, and I would like for you guys to kind of think about what is this amount that's over here on the right. And if you want to respond in the chat, that would be awesome. Or if you want to just tell me out loud, that would be okay too. I'm not sure I can see the chat. Okay, I'm seeing all kinds of answers popping up. Ah, okay. I'm looking. Okay, I see lots of different answers. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's the unit. Does that change your answer? I really wish y'all could talk.
I changed my answer.
Today. Yeah.
No, it's 42 hundredths.
Okay, so what was the problem there? I knew that would be tricky, right? That's a little tricky. Okay,
We
because
didn't know what our unit was.
now the unit wasn't defined. It was defined in our mind because when we typically see these place value pieces, we think of this is our unit, right? Okay, but in shifting units, this is an activity from Vanderwall, and the directions are in the handouts. But the way this works is kids get some place value pieces. They have a collection that you have defined the parameters of. And then you're going to tell them that you have the unit hidden, either in your pocket or behind your back. And then you're going to show them the unit like I did on the slide. Here is our unit. And then they have to define what the amount is. So I just made some slides to kind of demonstrate that. So there is our answer based on our unit, okay, 42 hundredths. So now, this time, there's our amount. You notice the amount didn't change. What changed is the unit. So if this is our unit, what amount is shown?
You have lots of answers of 4.2.
4 2/10.
4 2/10. So the pieces that time didn't move. It's the unit that we're changing. So there, hence the title, shifting units, of course. And so, and once again, if this is our unit, now what is our amount?
42 thousandths.
Yes, 42 thousandths. Okay, so, and in Vanderwall, they suggest after you've done several of this as the teacher and the kids know what the directions are and how to do it, of course, then it can become a partner game where one person is the one choosing the unit and the other person has the pieces and does the naming. So that's a way that you can do that with students. And you could also just do it kind of as like this, as even a number talk kind of situation, I think. So now we're going to play a game called Decimal Roll and Cover. This is also from Vanderwall, and I have the directions in our handout. But I was going to play it virtually with you guys as well. I noticed that our time's a little bit late there. So Kelly, what do you think?
I think you're good to go. I think we're all happy to hang in here and those because I saw the cool activity.
Okay, so I may have to stop the share for a second because I'm going to do something virtually, and I'm going to put in the chat an app that you guys can open and do on your screen if you want to kind of do along with me. How about that?
Ooh, that would be super fun.
Okay, so there in the chat is something that you guys can open, and then I'm going to open it on my screen as well and kind of show you how it works, hopefully. I have a couple of things. Sorry. And I know you can't see that yet. Okay, there we go. Okay. So now I'm going to have to find my Zoom. It's disappeared. And share my screen. I may have to share my whole desktop for a few minutes. I'm sorry about that. Just so you guys can see everything I have up here. Okay, I'm just going to show you guys how this app works. If you have it open on your computer, that would be great, but you can follow along if not. This is just a decimal demonstrator. And so there is the one hole. And when you want to drag it around the screen, you have to click on drag. To split it into partitions, we just click split, and then for tenths, you just click it one time. If I want a section to be hundredths, I can click it again. And even if I wanted to do that, I can make it thousands as well. And then I can go back and change that. So since the directions for this game are to work with a 10 by 10 grid, I'm going to split this piece all the way down like that. Okay. So, and then when we want to shade it in, we just click on color, and the colors themselves, you can't really change the color, but you just click on the pieces to color it in. So there is that demonstrator. Now I also have a link to, I made a spinner, a virtual spinner, which is linked. And so we're gonna, can you guys see the spinner now? So I'm just gonna click the spinner and then we'll color it in the fractional piece. And so there we have. Okay, so there's our virtual spinner, and now can you color in what that would be on your piece? So there we go. And so in this, the goal is to try to cover your whole 10 by 10 grid. And so we can spin again with our virtual spinner, and you guys should have a link to that spinner. And of course I get the same one. So that's the randomness of it all, of spinners. But the one cool thing about this app is when we get to thousandths, we can click on, let's see, I did that wrong. We want to split, and then if I need thousandths, I can split it into thousandths. And if I want to color in just one of those pieces, I can do it. So,
oh, Lisa, that was super cool.
yeah. So that is kind of a nice demonstration for that, and can work with that decimal game. So hopefully you guys got a chance to see that, but because of the sake of time, I'm just going to shrink that down. And you guys should have a link that works to go to this decimal spinner, but that wheel decide, you can design your own spinners. And it actually has HTML code that you could put it into. If you've got a web page that you want to embed it in, you can do that too. So that's pretty awesome if you code, which I do not. So hopefully you're seeing my screen and seeing my PowerPoint now, because I do want to, there's another really, really cool game from Orgo, and Orgo has some resources available through their home site now. So if you guys are still hanging with me, do you guys see my Orgo stuff?
We do. It looks great.
Okay, awesome. No, I might just click on it. Oh, there we go. So when we go to this Orgo page, they have, because of the COVID crisis, they have they've made it a site called Orgo at Home, and I'm just going to show you how to get there, because it's not, you do have to do a little bit of clicking from the Orgo education page. You enter here and you go to Orgo at Home, and they have a lot of stuff. I'm not going to show you all of it, but you do have to choose United States as your country. And if you haven't explored Orgo stuff before, they are totally awesome. I love, love, love their stuff, because it really does have the quantitative support that so much of our curriculums are lacking. So I really love the support that they give. They have their at-home stuff. It looks really good to me too. I'm just going to show you some 5th grade. They have 5 weeks worth of it, and they have the weeks planned out. I don't know if anybody's looked at these, but there's kind of how it rolls. So if you're needing some in some of the non-traditional instructional materials, this might be a good place to look. But we're just going to check out week 1, and there's just a little bit of things that kids can do each day of the week. We're going to just take a look at the game that's on Thursday, because I actually have all of the Orgo books, the whole set of the fundamentals books. And this one is a game that's in the fundamentals red book that is for 4th and 5th grades. So we can just take a look at what that game would look like if we click on it. Okay. This is target 10, and we're just trying to build a decimal or build the number 10. So we can choose to have, when we roll, either ones or tenths, and then we have to keep a running total. So
What are we having for supper tonight?
I don't know, but I bet it's good.
I'm sorry, my mom walked in the room. I forgot.
But if y'all are cooking, we might come over.
Come on.
There's five. So if it's 5, it's 5 ones, and then we would put our total here. So you guys kind of can see how that game plays. But this is available for your students. They can play this at home. And if I'm just going to shrink that down, because on my screen I have kind of played a game and took a screenshot of what it might look like. So at first, kids might choose to add whole numbers because we're trying to get to 10. But then, for example, I had 6 as my total, but when I rolled a 5, that would put me past 10. So then I had to start adding on tenths at that point. And so, but it was kind of fun to play. I played both sides and played by myself, but it was kind of fun to play. But what might be this is totally symbolic. So what might be some supports that kids could use along with this to build those connections?
Hi, Lisa. I was thinking they may be able to use either the bundles and sticks, and then they could replace the one as the whole bundle, and then take it apart as whether it was a group of toothpicks or a group of popsicle sticks, and that could be 1/10 of that.
Yeah. So thank you, Julie. That is a great idea. So that could be a place value piece that kids might have access to at home if they've got some craft sticks. They probably don't have the traditional place value pieces, but bundles and sticks might be something that they have at home that they could use. So that's nice. Okay, and there's another game in the red book. If you have this book, that is a first to one. Also, I will mention too that there is a fundamentals blue book for grades 5 and 6, and it also has an activity, which I didn't give you guys copies of because of I didn't want to copy a whole book. But if you've got these on your shelf somewhere and you're looking for decimal activities, you might want to pull them out. So just to make that a little bit known to you guys. There's a couple of other just real quick activities that I wanted to show you guys. Nope, sorry. As there's a zoomable number line, which does require Flash Player. And remember, just Bonnie showed us some good number line resources yesterday as well. So they would be good for decimals too. Okay. But this one, if we want to zoom in, we just click on it and you can, there our tenths appear. If I click again, we're going to keep, there we go. So I can see the numbers in between. Okay, so this does make, it helps kids to see that there are an infinite number of numbers between numbers, which is a big idea, right? Big idea and a big deal. So, I'm gonna shrink that down. And then ICT Games has lots of activities and a lot of good things as well. And they have a decimal demonstrator, which I'll take a really quick look at this. And the unit for this is a cup. So they're stacking cups for their ones. But so when we do this, we're adding on pieces of that cup. And so you can, and some of the things you can do just the decimals, just the symbols, or we can take the symbols away. Or if you wanted it just to be whole numbers, you can do whole numbers as well. So that's from ICT Games. They have a lot of nice things. And they also have a flip counter, which when I was interventionist, I used to use the flip counter with whole number counts for count arounds. So if we wanted to do a count around starting at 1 and counting backward, for example, you know, we could have kids doing that count: 9/10, 7/10, 6/10. And so it's just something that you can use as you're doing that count around, and you can show that on your board. So just a nice place to look. So there's all the resources I have. And I know I went over time and I'm very sorry. But next week, we've got lots of things on the horizon. I think our book studies actually next week. So Bonnie, if you want to, or Kelly, if you want to talk to us about what's going on.
Indeed. Next week happens to be KCM Favorites. They are books that have informed our kind of life as mathematic educators. We have lots of different books, and some ones that you want to know more about, and some ones that will be brand new to you. And so we hope that you'll join us again. That's every day next week at 2 o'clock. On the horizon after that is the week of multiplication, and after that is the week of fractions. So those of you that are hanging with us, I promise you, we are with you during this entire stay-at-home time. Lisa, that was a fantastic job today.
Well, thank you. And if you guys do that unit of you activity, I want to see what your kids do with that. I'm really interested in that one. I really am. Want to know.
Fantastic. We always end with giving Lisa some feedback with regards to the good job that she did. I promise you, it takes them way more than 30 minutes to create a 30-minute presentation. A lot of time digging around and finding some stuff. So unmute yourself and give her some kudos, or type it in the chat. Amazing resources. Bonnie's got 10 windows open because she's been in there checking out some of the same stuff that you did. Amy says, thank you, Lisa. Lots of fantastic resources to share with 4th and 5th grade teachers. Indeed. Indeed. You saw the evolution this week as we went from kindergarten all the way up through 5th and 6th grade. Mary Kate says, thank you. Christy is inviting us all for dinner. So it's fried fish for dinner. So she's inviting us for dinner. We love the humor. Again, that's what happens when you become a group of friends. Again, I think one of the powers for today, Lisa, happens to be the wonderful online resources that you gave us. And again, for me, seeing things that are new, just when I think I've seen a little bit of everything, because I've seen lots of virtual manipulatives, use them with teachers in a teacher ed course that I taught. I promise you, I hadn't seen that one where it divided it yet again. That was super cool. So, so I thank you. The Kentucky Center for Mathematics is here to support all the teachers in both the state of Kentucky and across the nation. So we are so glad that you spend time with us. And all of our sessions are archived in our website. You never need to worry about where am I going to find this presentation and where are those resources. They will always be housed on our virtual website. Happy Friday, everyone. We're so glad you're here. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.